欢迎来到话题面对面。我们今天要特别专访的是日本首相安倍的内阁特别顾问，也是他的发言人谷口智彥教授。他现在也任教于日本庆应大学，专长国际政治、经济以及外交。Now we will have a special interview with Professor Tomohiko Taniguchi, Special Advisor to the Cabinet of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and Professor of Keio University. Thank you, Professor Taniguchi, for accepting my interview request. And I think this online interview will be the most suitable way to communicate at this moment because of the outbreak of the COVID-19. The whole world now is watching why Japan decides to postpone their 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games. And on top of that, the Japanese government just declared the state of emergency. So if I may, I would like to begin my interview with a special focus on the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games and the latest declaration of state of emergency. Good evening, Professor Taniguchi. My first question is that on March 24th, the Abe administration and the IOC reached a consensus on postponing the Tokyo Olympic Games until next year, but it will still be called the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games. How was this decision being made, and what are the major reasons for the Abe administration to decide to postpone the Games? And do you think it's due to the pressure from other countries? And how does the general public in Japan make of this decision?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rebecca, for having me for today's interview. On that question, the first point that I should make is that while there are many people in Japan who actually expected the Games to happen this year, it's been no longer something that the Japanese government, let alone the Japanese organizing committee, could decide. It is an affair. It is a sort of decisions to be made that had to be made by the International Olympic Committee. First and foremost, the ownership of the Games, the Olympic Games, belongs not to the host nation by any means. It belongs to the International Olympic Committee. And given the fact that the Olympic Games have become so much big in scale and scope, involving a huge number of stakeholders, well, it's been all the more natural for the IOC itself that it had to take more time to come to the conclusion. But before IOC made up its mind, Shinzo Abe, Japanese Prime Minister, hinted many times. First, when he spoke with other members of the other leaders of the G7 member countries, in which he said that the coming Olympic Games must be held in perfect conditions, symbolizing that the humans have won over the virus first originated in Wuhan, China. So Shinzo Abe made that hint a number of times before IOC and Tokyo jointly came to that decision.
So do you feel any pressure from the other countries? And since you mentioned that the Olympic Games have to be conducted in a perfect situation, so now we know that COVID-19 has already severely impacted the global economy, and Japan has already made huge investment to prepare for the Olympic Games. So what kind of other economic stimulus plans are the Japanese government providing to revitalize the economy?
I think there are two kinds of questions to be addressed. One, what sort of negative damage that is going to cause by postponing the Olympic Games to the Japanese economy? That's the first question. And the second relates to the negative repercussions caused by the spread of this pandemic itself. And naturally, the second question is much, much bigger than the first, because the pandemic is causing so much damage, not only to the economy, but to human lives. And although the number of death tolls in Japan remains still relatively low, with its number being 100 or so. You're looking at Italy, Spain, United States, and so on, where a huge number of people are being killed at this present moment. And so it is going to cause one of the biggest negative impact ever experienced by humans to the world economy. And that makes it very much important for countries such as Japan to boost its economy itself. After all, Japan's economy in its size is the third largest and more than 3 times as big as South Korea's, for instance. So by boosting Japan's economy, Japan could contribute positively to the revitalization of the world economy. Now, about the first question, now the games are set to open in July next year, 2021, so that the games could still be called 2020, although actually those games will be held in 2021. If so, the negative results to be caused by the postponement could be minimal. If you think about an outright cancellation of the games, it will mean much dire, because you're talking about the loss of money, loss of opportunity, loss of tourism, but more importantly, loss of faith among the people in the future, in the economy. And so I could say that the cancellation rather than postponement would cause much more serious negative impact to the Japanese economy.
Okay, so the game needs to be conducted in the best condition in Japan. So now that we know that now that the Tokyo Olympics have been postponed for up to 1 year to next year, 2021, July 23rd. From now until next summer, what will Japan do to better prepare itself and other countries for the Olympic Games?
This 1 year, Rebecca, is a crucial sort of window of opportunity, not only for Japan, but also for developed nations such as Taiwan and other countries to join together to develop vaccine. Vaccine is the most effective way to win over this pandemic. And over the next 1 year, medical professionals and scientists from across the world must join their knowledge and effort to create an effective piece of vaccine. So that, in that sense, the coming months will be very much important.
Okay, we do really hope that we can as soon as possible to find a vaccine to best combat the virus. So because we noticed that the number of confirmed cases in Japan has already escalated sharply after holidays, and Taiwan might see similar trend. And just this week, we know Prime Minister Abe has already declared the state of emergency. Which areas will it be covered, and how long you expect it will last?
The state of emergency is something pretty much different substantially from the ones you are looking at in cities and countries such as Madrid, Spain, Paris, France, New York, the United States. It is a modest kind of emergency declaration. Nonetheless, it gives a huge, stronger push to the minds of the people so that they must stay home, not go about, not walk about, and they should do as much as they can from their own homes rather than commuting. So it is to suppress people's movement, and it's not going to be backed by brutal forces such as police force, let alone military of any kind. It is a piece of moral suasion. Nonetheless, the fact that never before has this declaration be made in the Japanese post-war history, it bears weight. And the execution of the measures is in the hands of governors of prefectural governments. So in the case of Tokyo, the governor of Tokyo is going to bear much heavier burdens to control the people's movement and to help suppress people's movement and encourage them to maintain an adequate amount of social distancing.
Okay, so you said that it will be a modest kind of state of emergency. Means that I think the main idea will be to reduce the movement and also to reduce the people's interaction. And we also noticed there is a report that a U.S. embassy in Japan issued a health alert to require that American citizens in Japan should return to the U.S. as soon as possible. And how do you see this measure taken by the U.S.?
It is very much understandable because living in a foreign country where the language spoken locally is something that you don't speak, it makes you feel nervous, much more nervous than otherwise. And so in cases such as this, almost all governments, regardless of the country, are encouraging their citizens to do the same. So the Japanese government is also encouraging those people living in France and other nations to come back home, although they must, the Japanese citizens coming back from abroad, must take 2 weeks of self-quarantine. And in that sense, the announcement that you heard from the Tokyo-based U.S. Embassy is understandable and with reason.
All right. And now we see that maybe Taiwan has done a fairly good job at containing the spread of the coronavirus. However, it is still excluded from the WHO mechanism. As you recall, in late January this year, Prime Minister Abe even called upon the world to include Taiwan in the global network to fight against the virus. Taiwan can help. So what can Taiwan and Japan do together to combat the virus?
Health for humans is the most important common goods. Therefore, it should exclude none. Let it be Taiwan or whoever. The most important common goods is for the humankind, and so it must be inclusive. I think that's a general consensus you could find among the Japanese people. But before Taiwan joining WHO as an official member, still Taiwan and Japan could do a lot. First, Taiwan and Japan should share information, know-how, knowledge as to how they have survived this tremendous pandemic. Taiwan is the best performer, bar none, without question. But Japan so far has done a relatively good job. If you look at the growth rate of the number of those people who lost their lives, Japan's curve is rising like this. But if you look at the curve for the United States, the UK, Spain, and Italy, it's almost like this, 90 degrees. Japan is like this. So Taiwan and Japan could share information, knowledge, so that jointly they could tell the rest of the world how they have survived the pandemic. The second point is that medical professionals, scientists from both Taiwan and Japan should join their hands, as I said, to develop the most crucial medicine, vaccine for the coronavirus. I think those are the things that Taiwan, Japan could and should do together.
Yeah, so what message would Japan like to send to the people of Taiwan at this moment that both of us are going through the common difficulties?
I think so, yes. Unfortunately, coronavirus, I must say, first originated in Wuhan, China, sees no border at all. We're looking at a truly borderless world. And so Taiwan and all other nations must join together to develop the virus first and foremost. Vaccine first and foremost.
Yeah, because virus has no border at all. And now we know that Japanese government just announced the travel restrictions for all the travelers, maybe 73 travelers from abroad. When do you expect the restriction to be lifted?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball before my eyes, and I wish I could tell you how soon. Everyone wishes that the ban is going to be lifted as soon as possible, because the local economies in Japan have been very much dependent on tourism. And speaking of tourism, the Taiwanese are among the best customers that Japan has had for years, and even more so with local communities embracing the visit of Taiwanese tourists. So I wish the ban would be lifted as soon as possible, but that much is something that I could say for the moment, because the pandemic is spreading still in South American continent and probably in Africa as well.
Yeah, thank you very much for your precious time and views, Professor Taniguchi. Because I asked because we hope to see you very soon in Japan when the virus is contained. Thank you again.
Indeed.
And may you stay safe and healthy. Goodbye.
The same to you from me. Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.